Hey everybody, it's Master Gallengeist here, bringing you my review of the anime Japan Sinks 2020 Season 1 on Netflix. And I did not like this at all. I would not recommend watching this anime whatsoever because I really didn't find that many redeeming qualities in it. There's just. Ugh, it did not work. And that's kind of disappointing because animation wise, it's by the same anime studio that did Devilman Crybaby, and it just didn't work here. I think their stuff works on better kind of fantastical kind of elements. Here, it just led to some weird ass looking facial expressions and shit that would pop up when it was like supposed to be emotional or whatnot. I'm like, what the fuck am I looking at? Now, it really worked on the kind of disaster level porn of like all the destruction and everything, but I'm like, okay, it's all spectacle and no substance. Granted, they're trying to get to like the resiliency of the human spirit, but when you don't give a crap about any of the characters and they essentially do dumb stupid things or the plot kills them in stupid fucking ways, you're just like, okay, this universe is run by an angry cruel god that don't give a fuck about shit. So, before I even get into the spoilers, the big kind of shit that goes on with this. Logical inconsistencies with shit going on. Like, even the basic premise of, like, Japan sinking is not in and of itself that bad of a thing, but it is accelerated at such a rate and executed in such a rate that's like, what? And you even get to the end when you're like, oh, here's all this stuff that kind of pretty much fixes Japan sinking. And it's done in, okay, in an accelerated rate because honestly, within terms of the Earth and how old it is, a couple hundred years for it to like pop back up really isn't that long of a time. It's just like, oh, okay. It's like, oh, it's like the Titanic kind of stuff. I'm like, yeah, but I kind of felt some more stuff with the Titanic, people. And character development is just like, characters are dumb, stupid things happen to them because the plot demands it. That's it. Action is just the most bizarre kind of fucking thing. Like, this really isn't that much of an action movie, but there are weird action sequences that occur that are funny, but not because they are supposed to be funny. I'll get into that as we get through. So I would dodge this like any all get out. Don't don't go for it, please. It's there's better anime out there. There's better things on your time. Just no, I would not recommend it. And if you like it, that's all cool. I don't. I'm not here to shit on things that you like. That's cool. I'm glad you enjoyed it. I'm glad that you enjoyed it more than me. That's cool. Do it. But now we're going to get into why I have so many problems with this thing. So, we start at the beginning, as we always should. And we see that it's the typical kind of life. So it's like, okay, we gotta at least set a base groundwork for what's going on. The first episode, I at least was okay with. That's the only time I really had feelings for what was going on. So we see that various parts of the Muto family are doing their usual kind of stuff. We see the son goes at home playing games and all that stuff. We see that the father is pretty much building the Olympic Stadium and everything because of the 2020 Olympics. We see the mother's on an airplane, and we see the daughter, Ayumu, is doing stuff with track and field. She's evidently in middle school and wants to kind of get up there and do stuff for the nationals and all that. Okay, cool. College, all that kind of stuff. Represent Japan. All right, cool. We got our baseline. We've got our character stuff. Cool. Then, of course, the whole earthquakes and everything start happening, and the only time I really felt anything was when Ayumu uh, was in the locker room. It got all screwed up, and her classmates are pretty much just like fucked over. And one of them's like reaching out like for help, and she just runs, cuts her leg, which becomes the most fucking. It honestly ruined this for me. That cut and every repercussion for what has occurred throughout this thing boggles my goddamn mind. And so she's running away. She wants to check what's up on her family, all that kind of stuff. So we'll get to the leg. she's trying to run around. She goes back home, tries to find her brother, can't find him. Father's trying to work his way through the destruction, gets kind of knocked out at one point. Mother, plane, crash lands in a water canal and saves a boy from a tsunami that we don't really see. But of course, Ayumu is running around trying to find her family, and we get the whole thing of like her dad's really into like lights and shit, and one of the kind of like shrine hills has all these lights on the tree. She's like, "Hey!" And of course, finds dad. The mother gets there too, and the brother is brought by one of their kind of neighbor people's, Nanami. And it's like, okay, cool. So here's where it starts to get really, really screwed up. The son pretty much was really fucked up during the earthquake, and there was shit and blood in his eyes, and evidently his eyelid kind of got cut. His father has a staple gun, and a medical staple gun, I might add. So, that's all cleaned and everything, and Ayumu doesn't do anything with that for her leg. One. So you're like, what? I'm like, you can talk about how she didn't think about it or didn't care about it, but I'm like, she could have been like, hey, I was wounded. Can somebody help me? You might even try and say it was like a scratch, but it really didn't kind of work out that way. So, they pretty much go to sleep. We got this one Koga dude having headphones on and everything, dealing with his own kind of thing. Evidently, he was a runner as well, even though you don't really learn that shit until like later. I'm like, what the fuck is up with this shit? They wake up. Evidently, the water's rising, so they need to like start moving and shit. So, they start moving. They start voting on what to do. We see, of course, the tensions going because of scarcity of resources, firestorms and shit, because bodies were falling out of the sky, because helicopters getting all fuckity-doo-dod. And of course, she's like walking through it, and her cut's giving her shit, and it's like, okay, that's gonna either get infected and kill her, or they're gonna have to chop her leg off. And we get through it, and we'll get to it at the end, but I wouldn't have been okay with either because I don't feel that she's a character. She's just a fucking idiot teenager that they make do idiot teenager things. Because there's a difference between a kind of plot object that acts in the facsimile of what someone thinks a human would be, and an actual fucking character that acts like a character. Because I'm like, yeah, alright, fine, whatever. So they walk around. One dude's like, we'll go this way, and the family's like, we'll go this way. They go off and split off from the main group. And they find yams. And they're like, hey, let's dig for these yams, because he says, warning, don't do it. The dad goes down, fucking goes for it, and fucking hits a mine and gets blown up. And I feel nothing for it. Now granted, for a family, I would feel for that. I'm just like, it's so comical because you see the hand, you see the blood splurting, and it's like, I would have, the stylistic choice for it, I'm just like, okay. And of course we continue on. Ayumu is blaming herself for it and wants to throw away the shoes, and of course this causes rift with her mother, and we find out that evidently the mother is Filipino and the other two kids are like half Filipino and half Japanese. And it's like, okay, why was the mother on the plane? Find out later that she had a medical condition and she evidently had surgery, and that's what fucking kills her in this one. It's like, alright, cool. We'll get more in depth to it, but she's acting all crazy and her legs looking all kind of funky, and it's like, whatever. So they're pretty much going around. They get picked up by this dude who's acting like an asshole, drinking and driving. Go to stop off, get some gas, tries to pretty much rape the Nanami chick. But her and the mother beat the ever-loving shit out of him, and then continue on. And they pretty much run into an impassable place, and they're pretty much walking towards Mount Fuji, saying like, yeah, if Mount Fuji erupts, Japan's gonna sink. Okay. Why would that be? Why does that information? I mean, I understand that sometimes the information needs to be relayed or whatnot. It's just like, okay, why does that make sense? Because you can actually explain something, even with kind of techno-babble bullshit that these disaster-level movies do. But no, of course we see that Nanami is putting some shit. They actually took the glasses off the fucking drunk driving rapist ass fucker and give it to the Koga dude. And Nanami seems to be like making moves on his ass, but like Ayuma's like, ooh, I kind of like that ass. Fuck off, man. She's like, I gotta go to the bathroom. They fucking go down a hill, and she's looking over and she sees dead animals, and Nanami fucking gets like nuked by like poison gas, and it's just like I don't feel anything because there was nothing really there for her to be a character, and it's just like comical to see her just boom. And then an Estonian YouTuber who had filmed Okinawa sinking is like, don't go down there. I'm like, granted, I understand that like poison gas can just like come up on that, but it's like almost instant death, and like you guys don't smell anything or sense anything weird and pressure. It just was amazing that like Ayumu is just like close enough to be like, you will die if you go near there, but like honestly, if she was that close to the Nanami chick, she would have been fucking dead too. So that was another realm of death that she dodged that was like, what? Plot armor conveniences to an extreme. And it's just weird. I'm like, an Estonian YouTuber. Alright, that's oddly specific, but go with it. And evidently, the Go dude's got Estonian friends that he plays esports with and was getting kind of information there as well. Because that's how they figured out which way to go to split off from the group. But he comes down and is like, hey, yeah, I kind of can like carry one of you or whatnot. Because he's got like a fucking paragliding parachute fucking fan thing and Estonian candy. It's like, hey, kid, here, have this. That's important later because when they're in the sea, that's all Go and fucking Ayumu have to eat for a little bit. So they just kind of walk along, get to a convenience store, they're getting pretty much everything. The old man's like, fuck you, you steal my shit, eat my ass. And then, granted, I'm paraphrasing here and giving a general sense of his mood. He doesn't shout, eat my ass. But that really wouldn't be that far out of this crazy man as he starts shooting like arrows and shit at him, and we get one of the only real fake out deaths that we get with Go as he gets shot, but he's got his fanny pack and it kills his Switch knockoff. But the old man that fixed it for him, he lets him eat, and then the thing is like shitty ass rains coming down, kind of like nuclear and all that stuff with like fog from everything going on, ash and shit, and that of course they know that the shit's tilting and all that, but they pretty much figure out what to do. He's got his truck. They gotta go because it's tilting and everything. They start driving around and find this one English weird dude who's like, hey, take me! He can do all this magic and shit, and takes him to a fucking religious compound where they've got this like medium chick that can like commune with the dead and does shit with her son, and they're like a hippie commune with like Mongolian tents and a fuck ton of weed and even like poppies and shit. It was the oddest goddamn fucking detour when I'm like, what? Okay. I'm like, and this is where we get kind of strike two with Ayumu's fucking leg thing. I'm like, oh yeah, do work if you can, do school and shit. Goes like, I'm bored of this shit. Ayumu pretty much has some shit with her mom, goes to a fucking weird ass party. Koga and Kite are there. Kite's like fucking drunk and high at the same time. Takes Koga up to do a fucking DJ fucking thing because he's also fucking into music. Because it's like, alright, just start pulling fucking shit out and just doing it. Now, granted, I don't want to seem like I'm complaining for the sake of complaining. It's just these things are pulled out for no discernible reason. And it really doesn't say much, even how it is presented and executed of these characters. I'm like, okay, he's got this music stuff, and what does that add to his character? That he's an artist, he likes it or not, it's just like, oh, we wanted it seems like, it's like, we wanted a dance party thing, and then some dude's pretty much trying to, like, rape Ayumu, and she pretty much accidentally knocks him out. Kite shows up and starts laughing at that shit. Old man is like addicted to fucking morphine and is like, hey, I'm sleeping out here, and kind of going crazy. And so that then leads to the old man from the convenience store. They had gotten introduced to the medium and all that shit, and essentially hallucinates that his dead grandchild is this little boy dude, and he goes in with a bow and an arrow on a motorized scooter, kills two people, and attempts to leave the compound, kidnapping a child. Now, I understand how that seems like that could be a tense situation. The way it is presented and the way it is animated and the way it is executed is just the funniest thing for the wrong reasons. It's just the oddest thing. These people shouldn't have died. Okay? Honestly. They were so close that there's no way they couldn't have dodged the arrows, except for that the plot demanded that they get killed. Then, of course, they lock him up, figure out he's going through morphine withdrawal. Like, fucking kill him after the fucking ceremony, birthday for the kid. And, of course, Ayumu has been working in a community hospital portion of this, which brings me back to my other point. She knows that her leg is fucked up and doesn't even get medical attention within the realm of the couple days. I don't even know how long this shit's been going on. It should be a while. But she's helping this dude who's, like, warning about an earthquake, Mr. Onodera, and he, of course, is pretty much, like, paralyzed, can't speak. He's, like, using Morse code and shit, but she doesn't get any help for her leg. I'm like, so we're gonna play this fucking shit out till the very end, aren't we? So right now, the gods are pretty much being like, this chick is gonna either die or lose her leg, and I'm like, the thing is, it's not even like she's being stupid about it. I literally think the plot demands that she loses the leg for reasons. Not because she's ignoring her leg, not because she's being arrogant teenage twatmonger. That's an interesting job title. But, continuing on. I cannot pinpoint a valid reason for why she wouldn't have done anything with her leg, even presented within the anime itself. And this is worrisome because, okay, shit's going on. Wouldn't you fucking do something with your leg? Wouldn't you fucking, like, clean it out and even fucking cauterize the thing? I'm like, we've seen other shit with, like, even potentially doing that. You even show it with the God blessed brother in the fucking first episode. And you're like, nope! Alright, well, then the earthquake shit starts happening, and we see that the old man stays behind because shit's going down. Ex-sumo wrestler dude saves Go from being crushed. The kid gets fucking killed by a goddamn fallen rock that looked a lot more hilarious. The mother and the father had to deal with, like, some crazy ass people trying to steal gold from a vault because fucking we got that shit going on too. I don't mind it, but it just pops up out of nowhere. It's like, alright, the Daniel dude that they picked up hitchhike, he's like, I'm gonna stay here because this is my place. And the rest of the people just go off, minus the old man who dies when the thing collapses. I'm like, oh, okay. Alright. And everything's freaking because everything's pretty much sinking. They get to a part where, like, Ayumu would leave on a boat because she's one of the athletes, so she'd be given preferential treatment. But she figures out that her mom has had surgery, and because of how hugging her and everything, and evidently she's got batteries and shit because of her heart. Alright, fine, cool, whatever. Ship goes up, shit gets crazy, and they get rescued. Well, they're able to kind of, like, dodge that. They get to another part where they're like, hey, here's this, like, nationalistic Japanese thing that's, like, a boat that's gonna, like, save the Japanese nation. Alright, cool, guys. But finding out that most of the people were foreigners or half foreigners, they said, fuck your shit. They go off. Cool-ass fisher boat dude's like, yeah, come on, let's do this. It's like, those people don't know what they're doing. And they immediately, like, in the grandest tradition of disaster porn movies, fucking, they blow up almost immediately. And then fucking tank off the fucking fisherman's boat thing, injuring that dude. And somehow, fucking Kite and Onodera and the rest of the people fucking are able to survive. But, Ayumu, Go, and Fisherman Captain Dude are in the lifeboat, and this is, like, one of the most boring things, as we find that Japan's pretty much sinking. Mount Fuji's like, fuck yo shit, I'm blowing up. And then they're just, like, floating around. Most of the shit that they can find is, like, buildings that are, like, tall enough that they can break the surface of the water. Fisherman Dude dies in the middle of the night, gets pretty much picked apart by seagulls and eaten by a shark. They are able to capture a bird and make it burp up fish, and then use its beak to like eat the fish. But there's a hole in there. They start packing it, but then they eventually run into the mom and Koga, and like going around. Thing is, because of the ash being put out by Mount Fuji, she can't really recharge her batteries. Battery eyes. Well, I'm just trying to make this a little bit more interesting vocabulary wise. But that was crazy, as they're pretty much hallucinating for most of that shit, seeing some cool ass kind of like fish and shit. And I'm just like, are you really seeing fish? Like, once that shit's going on, I'm like, there's fucking holy helling shit things going on as the topography of the ocean floor is fucking changing. Now, I'm not a biologist, I'm not a zoologist. I don't know that much about fish and marine life. Alright? But even I'd know if the amount of shit that was going down with like the whole island of Japan and all that shit going on, I don't think fucking any marine life would be like going near there for at least a couple of days or anything, as like weird sediments are being put down. The building materials could be poisonous and hazardous to all their health and fucking like doing some weird shit to them. Also could be making them high. I don't know. Observations. But I don't think a shark would be that close to the fucking top to eat that dude that fast. I'm just like, whatever. So she's pretty much getting ready to the fact that she's like, hey, I'm also a good swimmer and shit. And it's like, okay, that's setting up Go to be able to swim later on because he can't swim. But they find a motorized boat. Mother sacrifices herself to untangle the boat, and they set her off. Ayumu wears the necklace and everything. They just keep going on to pretty much coordinates that they got from Mr. Onodera. They find a motherfucker, an amphibious fucking tank kind of vehicle being driven by Kite and Mr. Onodera. Well, Kite's driving it. Mr. Onodera's in there. I'm like, how in the ever-loving fuck nuggets do you pop that out of your ass? Because it seriously came out of nowhere. It's like, hey, I'm on a fishing vessel. And then fucker gets upgraded with a goddamn pay-to-win scheme there, man. It's like, yeah, let's kind of go here and do this shit because they need to get the rest of Onodera's research to kind of do shit to kind of help Japan. So they get to that point. He drives in there. They takes Mr. Onodera with him, but of course the island place is sinking even more, and he's able to get out. But Mr. Onodera pretty much seems like he drowns, but they're able to revive him. And Go's got the fucking hard drive because, I don't know, give it to the fucking kid for some reason, just so that you can blame it on him when it gets thrown down and somebody has to sacrifice themselves to get it. This is where we see Koga do his shit with his sprinting and everything. He gets it, tosses it to him, gets thrown off. Kite's like, ah! And I'm like, yeah, I get it, but I don't fucking care. I hate that. I love caring about characters and stories, and they just don't do anything to make me care. I'm like, yeah, because the plot demanded that dude died, and the plot demands that you act this way. So thereby, I don't connect with you on this. So they got that shit, and they're trying to figure out what to do. They find a fucking internet balloon that Kite then flies, and you're like, does he die? And then we get to the end, and it's like, what the fuck? But of course, he's able to use the internet thing, and a fucking helicopter pops up, and evidently a lot of Japanese was taken in by Russia. Okay. Alright. And honestly, I would thought there would have been more of an international effort to, like, help the people, because I'm like, holy fucking shit. You should do that shit. You should have plans for when, oh, granted, I understand worst case scenarios and shit, but, like, that's something you fucking plan for. Like, okay, yeah, granted, I understand there's, like, a lot of the Japanese population would be, like, probably wiped out, and you'd have to make figuring out how to logistically do that shit hard as hell. Probably comparable to D-Day or even bigger, to make sure you could save all the people. But it's like, okay, they take her there, of course, they're like, you kind of have a, like, bone infection, so we're gonna have to take your leg if you want to survive. And then we get the weirdest kind of confusing thing, because I didn't know when this goddamn video thing is that was wishing her a happy 15th birthday popped up. But evidently they filmed it, and that gives her the courage to live on and tell them to take the leg off. And I'm like, honestly, if I'd been through most of the shit than you, I'd just been like, fuck it, let me die. Like, this is just fucking, like, weird as shit. But, of course, the plot demands, no, I don't know, I'd be okay with, like, losing a leg, but the thing is, if it was through my own stupidity, that's one thing. But this was, like, fate decreeing, you shall lose your leg. That's how it felt. That's how it felt presented and executed. I'm like, there were multiple times that you could have, should have, and would have done things. And I cannot point to a single goddamn thing your character identifies with as to why you didn't do any of this or even worked against, like, having your leg. It's just the weirdest thing. I'm like, alright, fine. Because I'm going through, I'm like, if she doesn't die or she doesn't lose the leg, I'm going to be kind of pissed. But even when she got to the point where she's like, I'll lose the leg, I'm like, I don't understand this shit anymore. I'm like, okay, good, there's a consequence. But for what? That's where I start getting into an issue. But, of course, they start doing their thing. We jump forward 8 years in the future. Evidently, her and her brother had written a book about all the kind of stuff that they had done to kind of preserve everything. The island of Japan was pretty much rising back up in a couple hundred years, and well, like 100 years or whatnot. They're preserving like everything from Japan, settling people back in. Cool ass techno futuristic shit. We got into an Olympics thing. We see Go is able to swim, and he's holding his breath underwater. He goes to the Olympics on the esports team because that was his dream. He was like dual citizenship, but he was going representing Japan. And Ayumu is a running jumper in the Paralympics with her prosthetic leg. And Kite evidently survived, and Mr. Onodera has like this cool ass fucking like futuristic wheelchair and fucking techno display and shit. I'm just like, what? I don't even know how Kite survived being up in that kind of like shit. I'm like, okay, I'm glad that he is alive, but none of this shit makes any sense. It just was a fucking messy, just torture, not torture porn, but like disaster porn fuckfest that tried to be like, here's the resiliency of the human spirit. And I'm like, I felt nothing human throughout any of it. It was just essentially almost like watching a kid destroy an anthill and say that this means something. I'm like, yeah, it means you need to not destroy the anthill. You just fuck with these people, and it just... I didn't feel anything with any of their deaths. I didn't feel anything for any of the characters, and I felt like my time was wasted. Now, if you enjoyed it, do not let anything that I've said say that like you're bad for enjoying it. I don't believe that. Alright? I like things that are bad too. I like the movie The Meg. But that's mainly because I like the bad things because they're funny to me. Do I? You know? That's my own kind of weirdness. So if you enjoyed this, cool. But there's just so many problems. When I look at a piece of art, like any kind of medium anywhere, it needs to grab me in and make me believe there's certain rules and everything in the world. This really didn't pull me in at all. It had a little bit of it being able to kind of do that with like the feeling of like your track mates in that locker room. And I'm like, oh god, that kind of sucks. But after that, I need characters or situations or even a good enough plot of like to get me going. And plot can range from like epic save the universe to just survive and be human. And this did nothing on that kind of level for me. And I would not recommend this to anyone. It's 10 episodes. Go watch something else. Anything else. Go rewatch a lot of things. Rewatch a lot of things. Anything. I was very disappointed in this. And... oof. Yeah. Oof. That kind of... I do not recommend. There we go. So those are my opinions on the anime. Tell me what you guys think in the comments below. If you liked it. If you didn't like it. If you agree with me. If you disagree with me. Also like and subscribe. And I hope you have a good day.